We all know that Zoro isn't a devil fruit user, but what if Zoro ate the Gomu Gomu no Mi instead of Luffy? How would this change in circumstances affect the overall progression of the story? How funny would a swordsman with rubber arms be? In this timeline, everything will be proceeding as usual with Zoro's backstory. However, one small chance was that Shanks and the Red Hair Pirates went to Shimotsuki Village to repair their ship instead of Fuchsia Island. The Red Hair Pirates were enjoying their drinks at the bar. Meanwhile, Zoro was immersed in his intensive training outside the bar. As the hours passed, Shanks decided to step outside for a breath of fresh air, carrying a small treasure chest with him. There, Shanks saw Zoro doing intensive training. Shanks greets Zoro, and Zoro doesn't wave back. So Shanks went closer to Zoro to ask some questions about what he was doing, although Zoro didn't answer the questions. It was then that Zoro's eyes fell upon the small treasure chest in Shanks' hands and asked about it. So Shanks explains to Zoro that this chest is nothing special. Eventually, Zoro eats the devil fruit inside the treasure chest. Shanks' drunkenness suddenly disappears. But that's not just the reason why Zoro ate this fruit. Take note, to acquire this devil fruit, you have to have a strong resolve with regard to your dreams. So Zoro has the qualifications for this, since he has a strong will to become the strongest swordsman in One Piece. Moving on, Zoro continued his training with Kuina. During one training session, Zoro met Kuina's grandfather, Shimotsuki Kozaburo, who gave him a sword to aid in his practice. The following year, Kuina tragically fell down the stairs of her dojo and died, leaving Zoro angry and disappointed. Realizing that she would never have the chance to fulfill her dream, Zoro took it upon himself to carry on her legacy. He asked Kushiru for her sword, the Wado Ichimonji, and began working to develop his signature rubber sword style. In the original timeline, Zoro developed his signature 3-sword style, but this time, Zoro realized that he could leverage his rubber body, a result of the Gomu Gomu no Mi ability. Unlike the 3-sword style, the rubber sword style has a unique way of fighting. Zoro utilizes his rubber body to attack from a distance, much like an octopus. With the help of this unique fighting style, Zoro doesn't need to approach his enemies closely. Eventually, Zoro learned about Dracula Mihawk, who held the title of the world's greatest swordsman. He set off to sea to search for Mihawk to challenge him. However, he lost his way and was unable to find his way back home. To survive on his own, he started taking on bounties to cover his living expenses. He quickly built a reputation for himself as a pirate hunter in the East Blue, becoming quite famous. During his journey, Zoro arrived in Shell's town where Helmeppo and Captain Morgan were stationed. Contrary to what happened in the original timeline, Zoro wasn't captured by Captain Morgan here. Instead, he was able to wipe out the Marines and defeat the tyrant leader. However, that wasn't the end. Luffy encountered Zoro just as he did in the original timeline, due to news of a strong bounty hunter being in Shell's town. Now, imagine if Zoro met Luffy, who relied solely on physical strength, much like his grandfather Garp. Seeing that Luffy didn't possess the Gomu Gomu no Mi ability, Zoro wouldn't be convinced to join his crew. Therefore, Zoro rejected Luffy's offer and revealed his goal to find and defeat Mihawk. Consequently, Zoro continued his journey, while Luffy continued his adventure to become the Pirate King. You might wonder why there aren't any devil fruits for Luffy. Well, it's most likely because Garp trained Luffy to become a strong Marine. Despite being trained by his grandfather who is a Marine, Luffy's goals still remain the same to become a pirate due to all the stories he heard as a child. Continuing Zoro's journey, he meets his bounty companions Johnny and Yosaku. They then set sail for the Baratie restaurant for a meal. While they were dining, Gin returned to Baratie with his starving captain, Don Krieg. Gin explained the catastrophe that Krieg's fleet had encountered in the Grand Line when they ran into Mihawk, and how Don Krieg attempted to seize control of the Baratie. Mihawk had returned to finish off Don Krieg's pirate armada, but Zoro challenged him to a duel to fulfill his dream. The two swordsmen clashed intensely. However, Zoro used his unique rubber sword style. Despite the power difference, Mihawk easily parried both of Zoro's swords with a tiny cross dagger. Zoro used his rubber onigiri intending to end the fight, but Mihawk easily stopped it as well, stabbing directly towards his chest. Mihawk stated that he would remember Zoro's name, and as a testament to Zoro's willpower, he unsheathed his black sword. Sheathing the Wado Ichimonji and turning to face Mihawk, Zoro claimed that a scar on the back of a swordsman is shameful. With that, Mihawk slashed Zoro, causing a large scar that went from his left shoulder all the way down to his body, thus ending the duel. Later on, the Marines reported Zoro's power to the world government. Given the report, the world government recognized Zoro as a threat. As a result, the world government placed a large bounty on Zoro's head. Many Marines were tasked with capturing Zoro, but catching this moss head proved to be difficult. At that time, Zoro decided to travel to the Grand Line and escape to the Sabaody archipelago. In Sabaody, Zoro continued his training with his devil fruit abilities. A few days passed, and the capture of Ace was announced. News broke out that the Whitebeard pirates had declared war on the Marines. With this information, Zoro surmised that Mihawk would be there since he is a Shichibukai. Therefore, Zoro prepared himself and continued his intensive training for the upcoming war. After Sengoku reveals Ace's secret to the world, the 43 subordinate pirate crews of the Whitebeard pirates from the New World appear before Marineford Bay. The Whitebeard pirates themselves appeared in the center of the bay, having coated their ships to infiltrate penetrate the bay undetected. Whitebeard set off a massive earthquake using his Gura Gura no Mi ability, causing 2 giant tidal waves to crash into Marineford as a starting signal for the war. Kuzan froze the upcoming tidal waves and consequently the sea to trap the pirate ships with his Ice Age, as well as to provide the pirates a surface to conduct their attack on the Marines. Meanwhile, Zoro was on his way to Marineford for a rematch. On the other side of the ocean, Luffy and other prisoners were sailing to Marineford. As the Marines and pirates converged on the ice, a quick back and forth took place between Newgate and his commanders. It started with Dracula Mihawk launching a long-distance sword slash directly at Whitebeard, which was easily blocked by Jozu using his Kira Kira no Mi ability. At that moment, the clash between the Whitebeard pirates, the admirals, and the warlords intensified. A few minutes later, Zoro arrived at Marineford. Without wasting time, Zoro sought Mihawk to declare a rematch. But before reaching Mihawk, Zoro fought off the other Marines and Whitebeard pirates since he didn't side with anyone. While the clash was ongoing, Zoro utilized the ability of Gomu Gomu no Mi to attack Mihawk. However, Mihawk saw this and easily defended the attack. Again, Zoro attempted to attack Mihawk using the rubber sword style, but Mihawk fended off the attack using his Yoru sword. Zoro declared a rematch to Mihawk. Both swordsmen clashed intensely. With his training, Zoro managed to fight well against Mihawk. While Mihawk attempted to slash Zoro, some of his attempts were unsuccessful. Later on, Zoro was once again defeated by Mihawk. Given that Mihawk is on the same level as Shanks, it's clear that Zoro wouldn't stand a chance against Mihawk. Without the time skip, Mihawk wouldn't have trained Zoro. So after the rematch between Zoro and Mihawk, Zoro would probably go to another island and train himself. Back in the Marineford War, Luffy arrived to save Ace. Sadly, Ace was killed by Sakazuki. At that moment, Luffy was devastated. While Luffy's outburst temporarily paralyzed the battlefield, it consequently caused the Marines to redouble their efforts to kill him. Thanks to the Whitebeard pirates, they saved Luffy from the Marines. Fast forward, Whitebeard was slain by Blackbeard and Shanks arrived at the war. In the end, Shanks stopped the war. After the Marineford War, many Marines and Whitebeard pirates were killed. As a result, both Monkey D. Garp and Sengoku retired. Edward, Newgate, and Portgas D. Ace were buried on the island of Sphinx in the New World. Meanwhile, Zoro continued his journey in the New World to train and to have another rematch with Mihawk. In this timeline, we all know that Zoro wasn't trained by Mihawk. Therefore, it's possible that Zoro didn't know how to properly use Haki, especially observation Haki, which was taught by Mihawk. Still, Zoro would be able to unlock Haki without Mihawk's help. Later in his journey, Zoro found Mihawk on Kuragana Island. Once again, Zoro challenged Mihawk to a rematch. As usual, Zoro attacked Mihawk using his rubber sword style, but Mihawk blocked it. Mihawk didn't waste any time and attacked Zoro, but Zoro managed to block him with his sword. The clash was very intense. Given that Zoro had the power of Gomu Gomu no Mi and intensive training with his swordsmanship skills, Mihawk had a hard time dealing with him. But of course, without Haki and the Awakening, Zoro's chances of winning were below 30%. As the fight went on, Zoro couldn't land any damage on Mihawk. Meanwhile, Mihawk tried attacking Zoro from a distance, but Zoro still managed to dodge the powerful slash coming from Mihawk. At that moment, Mihawk used Armament Haki to increase his power. Then Mihawk released a barrage of slashes at Zoro. Although Zoro had the power of Gomu Gomu no Mi, he couldn't dodge the incoming slashes from Mihawk and took a lot of damage. At this point, Zoro slowly started losing to Mihawk, but not a chance. With his will to become the strongest swordsman, Zoro was able to awaken Gear 5. With Gear 5, Zoro attacked Mihawk from a long range. Watching Zoro's transformation, Mihawk was stunned. Continuing the fight, Mihawk blocked Zoro's attack with Yoru. Both swordsmen exchanged blows. At this point, Zoro had the advantage because of Gear 5. However, Mihawk was able to keep up with Zoro's speed and attacks. Using Gear 5 to its full potential, Zoro managed to gain an upper hand. Zoro was able to deal damage to Mihawk. At this moment, Mihawk stalled the fight, waiting for Zoro to run out of Gear 5. Knowing Zoro is a prideful swordsman, he wouldn't let Mihawk do that. As Mihawk blocked the incoming attack from Zoro, the clash between these two swordsmen just got even more intense. However, Zoro had one problem: his stamina ran out. Mihawk used this chance to finish off Zoro. In the end, Zoro was still defeated by the strongest swordsman of the sea. However, the journey of the rubber swordsman doesn't end there. If you like this video, smash that like button, subscribe, and click the notification bell for more One Piece content.